This is Mike Wendt from the Greater Cleveland Film Commission, and the Chagrin Documentary Film Festival is coming up October 7th through the 12th. Always one of my favorite times of the year. I'm actually here with one of the filmmakers, Patrick Creadon, who has directed a film called The Pantone Guy. And Patrick, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So this film, I will say, I'm happily a proud member of the selection committee. When I started it, I didn't know quite what to expect. It seems that almost like this, your lead subject here, Larry Herbert. It sounds
Mhm.
like he wants to tell his story, but it could have easily been a fluff piece, but
Mm.
what I was so drawn into it was like this guy has such a fascinating story. How did you get connected with Larry? And did it take you a while to get convinced to make this film? Because I know documentaries when it can be, a years long process. So
Yeah.
how did you get connected with Larry?
So, first of all, thanks again for having me and for having the film. We're really thrilled to be playing there. We've heard nothing but great things about your festival. Um, and so we, my wife Christine O'Malley, and I are a filmmaking team. We're based in Los Angeles, and we've been doing this a long time now. This is we've been making movies for almost 20 years now. And so we're at a point in our careers where every once in a while we just get a random phone call from a friend who's like, "Hey, this might be a bad idea, but there's this guy and he really wants to tell his story and he's figured out a way to get it funded and would you go meet with him?" And we get that happens a lot, and it's nice to get those calls because I I'm 58 years old now. I've been doing this since I got out of college. And to me, like, it's still kind of a miracle when like a really good documentary gets made because I know how hard it is to do it. It's hard to find a really good story. It's hard to find like like an interesting sort of participant or participants to be in the movie. The money's always tricky. The making of the film is hard.
Yeah.
All that. And so I'm always like I always like am happy to get on phone calls like that. Nine times out of ten, it doesn't lead to anything. But I flew down to Palm Beach, Florida, to meet with this 95-year-old guy, Larry Herbert, and I kind of did it as a favor to my friend. Like I just was like, you know, I mean, who knows? Like, let's see what this will turn into. Palm Beach is hard to fly into, by the way. Like, there's no direct flights from LA, and there's always weather there. So, like, getting in and out of Palm Beach is a little tricky. But long story short, about 5 minutes after I met Larry, I just knew this is an amazing story. I already knew what his invention was, and I was familiar with it. Um, so there was a hook to it. There was I appreciated right away that there was a built-in audience. Anyone who has ever used any of his color tools, and for that matter, anyone who works in design and anyone who works in advertising and communications and film and art, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they've all kind of they've all sort of been affected by Larry and what he did in one way or another. So I love that. Like I love that there are people who probably sat there and thought, who made this thing? Like how did this basically who created this language? Because really that's what Pantone is. It's a language of color. And anyways, that's a very long answer, but the point is a friend of ours called and was like, this guy wants to tell his story. He's 95 years old and he kind of wants to do it fast. Like he's healthy. I mean, he's doing great, but he's 95 years old, and he's like, I want, he says in the movie, he's like, are people going to look back and be like, I don't even know who that guy is, or like, or who's the guy who did this thing? He's like, I want a chance to really sort of tell my story. And we were like, that sounds great. I mean, it was such a fun project to do, and took us about a year and a half to make,
Yeah.
and we're really happy with it. We love how it turned out.
Now, when obviously, for those who are not familiar, Pantone is this, as you kind of touched on, it's this color palettes, and it's like each number has a different color associated with it. Did did you find that it was going to be now? Obviously, you have the colors, so you can show that visually, but like, did you have any like challenges in the narrative when trying to like fully explain what that is for anybody who's not familiar
Mm,
with the
mm.
Pantone?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I mean, there were definitely challenges, but there were no challenges that I thought were insurmountable. And we've been hearing this since we started our careers. Our first movie was a movie called Wordplay, which is about the New York Times crossword puzzle. And one of our colleagues was like, that is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. He's like, that, how are you going to make that interesting? How are you people solving crossword puzzle? That's there's nothing visual about it. There's nothing really cinematic about it. See, that's to me is my favorite kind of challenge.
Yeah,
And really what I look for in a story, it's I look for passion. That's it. Like I want to find people who are passionate about something. It doesn't matter what it is,
yeah,
because there's nowadays, like we're very fortunate to work with people like Brian Oakes and Jess Hutchinson and Kane Lowry. These are graphic artists and designers that we've worked with on a bunch of our projects, who help us visualize the problem that needs to be solved.
yeah,
And I think whenever we do that, we did that a lot in Wordplay. We did that a lot in this movie called IOUSA, which is about the US national debt, another very difficult topic to visualize. But if you have the right kind of graphics and stuff, and you kind of walk the audience through the story and through the problem, if you will, they you can literally see them and feel them like leaning in to the movie and
yeah,
paying really close attention, and learning stuff, and becoming like sort of solving the problem with you as you're telling the story. And I mean, I just love that. Like that's a bullseye for us. And
yeah.
so with Larry, there's one thing in the movie. There's this thing called the split fountain press. Now, I mean, if you hear that, you're like, I don't even know what that is. I can't even imagine what that even looks like. Some people know like what a printing press is, where like you put ink on this and you have paper here
Yeah,
and you go like that and you're printing stuff. And that's like an old fashioned press. Well, Larry came up with like a new way to do that, where you could press a lot of different colors on a piece of paper at the same time. I mean, that was a real innovation, and that was really the cornerstone to this empire that he built. And we talked about that thing for months, and he didn't have any pictures of it. He didn't have pictures of it because he didn't want people to see it, because he thought people were going to steal his idea. So me and Larry and Jess Hutchison sat together one afternoon, and she just started drawing it, and he was like making little corrections and adjustments, whatever. And so then once we kind of figured out what this thing even looked like, then just made motion graphics of it. And he
wow,
just he was like on the verge of tears when he saw it, because he's like, that's my baby. Like that's a
wow.
picture of my baby. So for us, you know, a lot of documentary storytelling is basically like, he said this and she said that, and you have a picture of this and a picture of that, and that's fine. I mean, that's like nonfiction storytelling. But when you can kind of create visuals of things that are hard to visualize, or almost that don't even exist in the real world,
Yeah,
and show them in a certain way, it's really satisfying, I think, for the audience. And it's satisfying, I think, for our subjects. They end up becoming part of the storytelling process. And I mean, I absolutely love that. So I saw that with Pantone early on. I saw this guy who was a real character, very successful, very much the American dream. But I also saw that his invention and how he went from step A to B to C, D, E, F, G, H, and H ended up becoming the thing that made him wealthy and
Yeah.
successful, but he had to do all these other things before he even got there. It's really, it's a particularly fun movie, I think, for young audiences who
Yes.
don't really know what they want to do, but they know they want to be successful, and they want to know, how do I find success? Larry Herbert is a really good example of someone who took this odd assortment of skills and passions and put them together and made something that the world needed, and the world didn't even know it needed it until Larry invented it, and then they're like, oh my god, this is amazing, we got this thing now. So it's really fun. I really enjoy the movie, and it's fun to share it with people.
Yeah. By the way, the film is going to play at the Chagrin Documentary Film Festival Wednesday, October 8th and Saturday, October 11th. Now, Larry came from like very humble backgrounds, I mean, you touched on it where he is that American dream story where he became this, super successful person. Was there anything that surprised you as you explored his story further? As you learn more about the, loyalty that he's had
Mm,
to his employees and the fact that he has such a great relationship with his children and now
mm,
grandchildren. Was there anything that really like kind of stood out to you as you got to know Larry better?
mm. Yeah, that's a good question. The thing that I've been thinking about a lot with Larry Herbert and his life story is a question of like balance in your life. And that to me, that's the thing that I find sort of most interesting and fascinating about Larry, because you can't really it's hard to have the kind of success that he has had, and you give things up in order to achieve that. And so, for instance, like Larry's first marriage did not they got divorced after around 15 years of marriage, I think is what it
Mhm.
was, 16 years of marriage, something like that. The
Yeah.
kids were young when they got divorced, and there's still some real pain there, because he married a great woman and they had a great family.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, he had an obsession with creating Pantone and making it work. Um, and he was very successful, and he was always really good to his wife, even after their marriage was over. It was never there was no ugliness to it. It was that Larry was married to his career. I think that's
Yeah.
safe to say. And so I think that's another thing for folks of all ages, but especially younger folks to consider, is how much success are you trying to seek in your life and your career, and what is the price you're going to pay for that? Because there's only 24 hours in a day, and there's only 7 days in a week. Doesn't matter who you are. That there's a lot of examples of people. I mean, I won't name anyone in particular, but there's lots of examples of people who are successful in sports or in the arts or politics or anything, frankly, um, who you know they're wildly successful in one part of their life, but they have a hard time in another part of their life. Oftentimes, it's like work and family balance, let's say.
Yeah.
And I just find that interesting. Yeah, I find that really interesting. And Larry's pretty old school, and he kind of keeps his emotions close to his chest, if you will. But I think to this day there's a I think he might never admit this, but I think there's a little bit of sadness, a little bit of regret that he poured so much into his work that there were some things in his life that were a little bit out of balance. But
Yeah.
again, that's not really, I mean, I'm only saying that because we're talking about it. In the
Sure.
movie, we just tell his story, and we talk about his personal life, and we talk about some of the challenges in his personal life, but that's for every individual to decide what is the balance and stuff. But it's something to think about. He he was very, very successful, and there's a price for that. So yeah, that's kind of the thing that I actually found. I thought about that a lot while we were making the movie.
Sure. All right, so I have two more questions. What was Larry's response to the movie when he first saw it?
He loved it. He really loved it. Um, I at this point in my career, I mean, I know hundreds of documentary filmmakers, and we all do it our own way, so to speak.
Sure.
Um, but one thing that has always been really important to us from the very beginning is that it's, when you're making a documentary, it's not my story. It's not me, the director. In some ways, like, I want to be invisible.
Sure.
I don't want people, there are definitely documentary filmmakers where, like, their name is above the name of the movie. It's like their movie, and it's their take on a certain thing. And that's fine. I don't aspire to do that. I want to get out of the way of the story. And to do that, we work really closely with our subjects, and we work closely with them. We always have final cut. We wouldn't do a movie if we didn't have final cut. You have
Sure.
to have final cut. You can't be like, hey, I'm going to make a movie about you and just tell us what you want.
Right, right.
That's not even really a documentary. I think when you say documentary, I think the audience assumes that there's journalistic integrity. You're
Yeah.
kind of acting like a reporter to tell this story. At the same time, though, I want our subjects to watch the movie and to give us feedback and to raise any concerns they may have. That doesn't mean we're necessarily going to respond to everything like that. We're not going to necessarily, but it's good for us. It's helpful when our subjects see the movie through their eyes,
Yeah.
and then we have a conversation about it, and then I think we end up making an even better movie when we do that. So Larry loved the movie. I don't even think he had like one single note about it.
Wow.
I don't think there's one thing he said. There might have been one. He gave me like one funny note that had to do with, like, it was like dissolving from one photo to the other. It was like
Sure.
so minuscule. I mean, I didn't even really notice it. And he said something like, "Is there any way to, like, could we use a different picture there or something?" It's something like, it was something like it was like a slightly unflattering photo, like, of his mom. And he's like, "I
Sure.
just wonder if, like, do we have a different photo?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure. If you, yeah, we can." Like, I wouldn't see that, And now that's not changing the story, and that's not affecting the journalistic integrity. What it's doing is, when you swap that photo out, Larry now takes even more ownership. It's
Yeah.
like, this is my movie. He didn't make it, but he's not going to watch the movie and be like, that one photo bugs him. And I just don't. For me personally, like, that level of engagement with our subject does not jeopardize the journalistic integrity of the film. That makes sense. And by the way, there's a lot of people who do what we do that do not feel that way, and they take the story and they go off in their own direction. And I've heard about some real tough conversations about,
Sure.
like, subjects being like, "What the hell did you do to my story?" And and I think part of our approach is the kinds of stories we like to do. We don't do hard hitting Alex Gibney type movies. We
Yeah.
don't do, like, the Kirby Dick exposés and things like that. And these are two filmmakers who I really admire greatly, but they're doing very different kinds of stories where you're not really engaged with the subject because the subject may be, up to no good, and they're trying
Yeah.
to expose that. So it kind of depends on what you're doing. But for our kinds of movies, I really want our subjects to feel like we're accurate, and and that they were involved in it because it's their story. And I want them to feel like, in some ways, I want them to feel like it's really captured who they are. I guess is the
Yeah.
best way to put it. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I love that. All right, so the last question, and maybe this might be a slight softball one, but what for you as and also your partner, when you get to showcase these films in film festivals
Mm,
with audiences engaged, what how does that make you feel, after sometimes spending, years, months, on these type of projects?
mm. There's nothing better than having a new movie and showing it to a live audience. We've had a couple of test screenings of the Pantone Guy, and we've had some film festival screenings around the country. And it's exciting, for filmmakers, it's exciting to walk into a room and to see an audience and to see people who made the effort, frankly, to get down there, to go to the theater and buy their popcorn and their Mountain Dew or whatever they're drinking and to sit there and there's a little bit of risk taking, I think, to to go down to the theater and to see a movie you don't even really know what you're seeing. It's a movie that isn't even really out yet. It's at a film festival. And I really admire those people. I admire the audiences that make the effort to do that. There's so much good work and good storytelling that's happening today. Um, and for better or for worse, a lot of it is like it's at our fingertips. We can watch it on our phones, we can watch it on our laptops, we can watch it at home. None of those things are bad. That's not bad. That's not a bad thing. But what is really like what takes all of this to a whole different level, I think, is to go to a theater and to watch this with a room full of people, maybe have a conversation afterwards with someone who was in the film or an expert, let's say, or whatever. Go, if there's a Q&A afterwards, that's fun. Sometimes the filmmakers are there, but it's just it's why it's kind of one of the big reasons we do all this. When we make a movie and it goes. Christine made a really great film about Taylor Swift a couple of years ago. It's called Miss Americana, and it was on Netflix. It was amazing. It was a great
Yeah,
film. And Netflix, I mean, Netflix is awesome. Netflix is making some of the best stuff out there right now. But it's funny when they finished that movie, they were prepared to just put it on the screening service, and they were going to schedule it and put it on the screening service and run ads and be done with it. And Christine's like, why don't we submit this to a couple festivals and
yeah,
see what happens? And I think there were some folks at Netflix that felt risky to them. Like you're kind of putting yourself out there, even if you're Taylor Swift and
sure.
you have a brand new documentary to go to a film festival, to play in front of a live audience, to get it reviewed, to get possibly turned down from a film festival who's like, well, that's not what we want to do this for this year, whatever it is. Well, long story short, they submitted to Sundance, they got accepted, they were the opening night film. I mean, like Taylor was thrilled. Like she
Yeah.
was a nervous wreck before the premiere that night because she's like, "Oh my god, I'm telling my life story to a room full of people, like real human beings." It's exciting. It's like going to a film festival and seeing a movie that no one else has really seen yet is really exciting. And I really appreciate the folks at your festival who make the effort and all the folks behind the scenes who work hard to get people into the theater. That's a whole other thing. Like that's a lot of work. But I think that I hope that this love of movies and love of seeing films in theaters never goes away because it's my favorite way to see a movie. And thanks to you guys, we get to do this with the Pantone guys. So I really appreciate that.
Well, with that, I just want to say, highly suggest the Pantone Guy. See it Wednesday, October 8th, Saturday, October 11th. Patrick, Creadon, thank you so much for being with us, and just go to chagrinfilmfest.org for ticket information. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks everybody. Thanks so much, Mike. Have a good one.